Welcome back to Easy Languages. Have you ever felt excited because your English was improving quickly, and then suddenly it seemed like your progress slowed down? Maybe when you first started studying, you learned new words every day. You could clearly see improvement from week to week. It felt motivating. It felt rewarding. But then something changed. You reached a point where you could understand quite a lot. You could have conversations. You could watch videos. You could read articles. Yet somehow, moving to the next level felt much harder than before. If this sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone. My name is Bella, and today we're going to talk about one of the most common challenges language learners face: the journey from intermediate to advanced English. Why does this stage feel so difficult? Why does progress seem slower than it did in the beginning? And most importantly, what can you do to keep improving even when it feels like you're stuck? In today's episode, we'll explore the biggest reason behind this challenge, and I'll share several practical ideas that can help you continue moving forward. So get comfortable, put your English brain to work, and let's spend some time learning together. Let's get started. Today we're talking about something that almost every language learner experiences sooner or later. At the beginning of your language journey, progress often feels exciting. You learn a few words. Then you learn a few sentences. Soon you can understand simple conversations. You begin recognizing common phrases. Every week feels different from the week before. The improvement is easy to notice. But after reaching an intermediate level, many learners start feeling frustrated. They study regularly. They listen to English. They read English. They practice speaking. Yet they don't feel the same rapid improvement they experienced before. Instead, it seems like they are moving forward very slowly. Many learners begin asking themselves the same question. Why was the beginning so much easier? Why does reaching an advanced level take so much longer? Of course, there are several reasons for this. Language learning is complex. However, there is one major reason that stands out more than the others. In my opinion, one of the biggest reasons is word frequency. Word frequency simply means how often a word appears in a language. Some words appear constantly. Other words appear only occasionally. This difference has a huge effect on how quickly we learn. Let's think about the beginning of your English journey. When you first start learning English, you are exposed to the most common words in the language. These words appear everywhere. You hear them in conversations. You read them in books. You see them in videos. You encounter them again and again. Because they appear so frequently, your brain learns them relatively quickly. For example, think about words like the, and, but, because, for, or with. These words are everywhere. It is almost impossible to communicate without them. No matter what topic you're discussing, these words will probably appear. Whether someone is talking about sports, travel, business, family, cooking, or education, these common words continue showing up. As a result, you receive enormous amounts of repetition. And repetition is one of the most powerful tools in language learning. When you hear the same word hundreds or thousands of times, eventually it becomes familiar. You no longer need to think about it. You simply understand it. This is one reason why beginners often improve so quickly. The words they are learning appear constantly. Their brains get repeated exposure every single day. Imagine learning your first 100 English words. Those 100 words are incredibly useful. You will see them everywhere. Every article. Every conversation. Every podcast. Every movie. The repetition helps your brain remember them. This creates a strong foundation. Once you know these common words, you can start understanding basic messages. You can recognize simple ideas. You can begin building your language skills. Everything feels exciting because your improvement is easy to notice. But then something interesting happens. As your English improves, you already know many of the most common words. The easy wins begin to disappear. Now the words you need to learn are less common. And that changes everything. Let's imagine that you learn a new word today. Maybe it's a useful word, but it's not one of the most frequent words in English. You might see it once. You understand it. You even write it down. But then you don't encounter that word again for several weeks. What happens? In many cases, you forget it. Then 1 month later, you see the word again. It looks familiar. You recognize it. You know you've seen it before. But you can't remember the meaning. So you look it up again. Then the same thing happens. A few weeks later, you've forgotten it once more. If you've experienced this, don't worry, this is completely normal. It happens to language learners all the time. In fact, it still happens to me when I'm learning other languages. I may study a word carefully. I may understand it perfectly. But if I don't see it again soon enough, my brain lets it go. Then I need to relearn it later. This process can feel frustrating. Sometimes it feels like you're learning the same word over and over again. The truth is that the problem isn't your memory. The problem is often the lack of repetition. Let's use a simple example. Think about the word frame. A frame is the object that surrounds a picture or photograph. Most people have picture frames somewhere in their homes. It's a common object. But how often do you actually hear the word frame in everyday conversation? Probably not very often. You might go weeks without hearing it. Maybe even months. Compare that with a word like because. You'll hear because many times every single day. The difference is enormous. One word receives constant repetition. The other doesn't. Naturally, the first word becomes easier to remember. This is one of the biggest reasons why intermediate learners often feel stuck. The words they need to learn now appear less frequently. The repetition becomes weaker. As a result, progress feels slower. The good news is that you're still improving, even if it doesn't feel that way. Many learners mistakenly believe they have stopped progressing. But that's usually not true. What is actually happening is that the progress has become less visible. In the beginning, learning 10 common words could dramatically increase your understanding. Now, learning 10 new words may not make a huge difference immediately. The improvement is still happening. It's simply harder to notice. At the intermediate stage, you're also strengthening your existing knowledge. You're becoming more comfortable with grammar. You're improving your listening skills. You're developing better pronunciation. You're learning natural expressions. All of these improvements matter. But they often happen gradually. Because they happen slowly, they can be difficult to see from day to day. I've seen an interesting statistic before. I can't guarantee that the exact number is correct, but the general idea is very important. The statistic suggested that the 100 most common English words account for roughly 50% of everything we read. Think about that for a moment. Just 100 words make up approximately half of written English. If that's even close to being true, it shows how powerful word frequency really is. Those common words appear constantly. Meanwhile, thousands of other words share the remaining percentage. That means many words appear much less often. And that means they require much more time to learn. So what can you do about this? How can you continue making progress when you're already at an intermediate level? I want to share 4 practical strategies. These strategies won't magically solve every problem overnight. Language learning still requires patience. But they can definitely help. The first strategy is simple. Spend more time with the language. I know this isn't the most exciting answer. Most people hope for a secret shortcut. Unfortunately, there isn't one. More exposure usually leads to more improvement. I have worked with learners who spend several hours every day listening to English. Some listen actively. Others listen while doing other activities. Because they spend so much time with the language, they encounter less common words more often. The repetition increases dramatically. As a result, they learn faster. Let's compare 2 learners. One learner listens for 30 minutes each day. Another learner listens for 4 hours each day. Who is more likely to encounter new vocabulary repeatedly? Obviously, the second learner. The more exposure you get, the more opportunities your brain has to notice patterns and remember information. Of course, not everyone has 4 hours available. Many people have jobs, families, studies, and responsibilities. That's perfectly understandable. But even increasing your daily exposure a little can make a difference. The second strategy involves spaced repetition. This is one of the most effective learning methods available. The basic idea is simple. You review information right before you're likely to forget it. Instead of reviewing randomly, you review at carefully chosen intervals. Many apps and websites use this system. You add words, phrases, or sentences. Then the program schedules reviews for you. Words that are difficult appear more often. Words that you know well appear less often. This creates efficient repetition. Your brain receives reminders at the perfect moments. Many learners find this method extremely helpful. Of course, it requires effort. You need to collect vocabulary. You need to review consistently. But the results can be impressive. Instead of relying entirely on chance, you create your own repetition. You don't have to wait 2 months to see a word again. You can review it tomorrow. Then next week. Then next month. This greatly improves retention. The third strategy is one that I recommend frequently. Repeat the same content multiple times. Many learners always search for something new. A new podcast. A new video. A new article. There is nothing wrong with that. However, repetition has tremendous value. Imagine listening to one episode only once. You hear a new expression. Then it's gone. Now imagine listening to the same episode 5 times. That same expression enters your ears 5 different times. Each repetition strengthens your understanding. You notice details you missed before. You become more comfortable with the vocabulary. You improve your listening accuracy. This is why repeated listening can be so powerful. Many learners underestimate how effective it is. Sometimes the best thing you can do is revisit material you've already heard. Every time you return to it, you discover something new. The fourth strategy is one of my personal favorites. Spend extended periods focusing on the same topic. For example, imagine that you become interested in business. For an entire month, you listen to podcasts about business. You watch business videos. You read business articles. Because all of the content focuses on the same subject, the same vocabulary keeps appearing. Words related to marketing, sales, customers, growth, and management appear repeatedly. Eventually, those words become familiar. The repetition happens naturally. Then perhaps next month you focus on health. Now you're hearing vocabulary related to exercise, nutrition, sleep, and wellness. Again, the same words appear over and over. This method creates a rich environment for learning vocabulary. Instead of encountering a word once and never seeing it again, you encounter it repeatedly within the same topic. I also enjoy doing something similar with individual speakers. Every speaker has favorite words and expressions. People naturally repeat certain phrases. If you listen to the same podcaster regularly, you notice patterns. Certain expressions appear again and again. Over time, those expressions become part of your understanding. Then you can move to a different speaker. That speaker will introduce different vocabulary and different habits. This gives you exposure to new language while still providing repetition. I have found this approach extremely useful in my own language learning. It helps create the repetition that naturally disappears at higher levels. So let's review everything we've discussed today. Moving from intermediate to advanced English feels difficult for many learners. One major reason is word frequency. At the beginning, you learn highly common words that appear constantly. Later, the words become less frequent. You encounter them less often. Because repetition decreases, learning feels slower. This is normal. It doesn't mean you're failing. It doesn't mean you've stopped improving. It simply means you've reached a stage where progress requires more patience. The solution isn't to quit. The solution is to continue creating opportunities for repetition. Spend more time with English. Use spaced repetition tools. Listen to content multiple times. Focus deeply on specific topics. These strategies can help you continue growing even when progress seems slow. Most importantly, remember that every advanced speaker was once an intermediate learner. Every person who speaks English fluently went through this stage. They experienced frustration. They experienced slow progress. They experienced moments of doubt. But they continued. And that's exactly what you should do too. Keep listening. Keep reading. Keep speaking. Keep learning. Even when improvement feels invisible, your brain is still building connections. Every exposure matters. Every conversation matters. Every listening session matters. Little by little, those small efforts add up. One day you look back and realize how far you've come. And that's a wonderful feeling. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I hope this episode gave you useful listening practice and a little extra motivation for your English journey. Remember, progress isn't always fast, but steady progress is still progress. Keep going. Keep believing in yourself. And keep learning with easy languages. I'm Bella, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care, and happy learning.